Hello, my name is Bryson Mortensen. I'm excited to welcome you to this session of the Summer Sacred Music Conference put on virtually by the Wesleyan Sacred Music Institute this summer. This session is presented by Al Reese and is a Handbell boot camp. Al Reese has served as the music director of the Virginia Handbell Concert since January 2008. He is a retired Army musician, having served over 21 years in various Army bands as a trumpet player. Al has participated in numerous Handbell Musicians of America festivals, conferences, and handbell exploration events, where he has rung in advanced performance choirs and all-state choirs. He has served as clinician and mass conductor at local and area and national events and was selected Associate Conductor for Distinctly Bronze East in 2015. He is accredited to teach conducting and music theory for the Handbell Musicians of America certification program. Al is a published composer and holds a Master of Church Music degree with concentration in handbells from Concordia University, Wisconsin, where he studied with William Payne, John Benke, and Arnold Sherman. He is currently an adjunct instructor of music at Norfolk State University and the music director and organist at St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Suffolk, Virginia. Looking forward to this session. Thank you.
Hi, welcome to our Handbell session, Handbell Boot Camp. My name's Al Reese. I'm the musical director of Virginia Handbell Consort and currently the music director organist at St. Paul's Episcopal in Suffolk, where I also have a bell choir. Welcome to our session. We are going to talk about bell stuff that is pertinent to ringers and directors alike. Well, let's get to ringing. The very first thing about ringing is your stance. Now, most of us will stand feet shoulder width apart and bend over a little bit and ring like that. A better way is if you put your feet in a check mark position. One foot forward of the other, and then the back foot slightly turned out. It doesn't matter which foot is forward as long as the other foot, the back foot, is turned slightly out. This gives you a real solid foundation, and it will take stress off your lower back because you are supporting yourself with the larger muscles of the lower leg rather than a lot of the lower back. Take one of your hands, make like an OK, and put it this way, and you have this circle, which will become your circle of support. What could I put in that circle of support? A handbell handle fits very nicely. And with just that circle, you want to seat the bell on that circle. This hand guard should be right against the thumb and first finger. And your first finger comes around and kind of meets your thumb. This is your circle of support. The bell will wobble a little bit. That's okay. To stop that, you bring your other three fingers in and just place them on the handle. Very solid, very secure. With this, you want to think more that you're supporting the bell, not gripping or holding it. We want to take extra energy and tension out of the equation. So the bell is just sitting there being supported. It's free to rock and roll a little bit. That's fine. Release those fingers and allow the bell to kind of tip back. Now the clapper is facing you, and you can see the screw in the clapper head. This is the ready to ring position. I was taught the damp and ready to ring position is the same. I don't like that as much. This is still a damped position, but this is ready to ring. The bell is cocked. I'm ready to go. It's off my shoulder, so I won't be late. Then to get the bell to ring, all I need to do is take those bottom three fingers and kind of pull them toward me like a squirt bottle. And then release it. If I've started in this position with the bell cocked toward me, leaning toward me, and then I give the gentle squeeze so the bell rings and relax, the bell comes back ready to start again. So if I need to do repeated things, can do that. So back to my F5. The next part, we need to incorporate a stroke, a ringing stroke. So on a slant line, just kind of slant down there, and then you're going to give the squeeze and release to get the bell to ring, and then you're going to finish in an arc coming back. So it'll look like a D laying on its back. And with the squeeze, that's your basic ring stroke. Make sure your ringers practice this in both hands. I'm turning to the side just so you can hopefully see it a little easier. That's all there is to it. It's very important to keep the bell in motion and upright once it has started to ring. When I talked about ringing, notice I talked about using these bottom 3 fingers to ring, not using your wrist. You should not ringers should not actively engage their wrist. The weight and the motion of the bells should cause the wrist to move. The wrist should not cause the bells to move. It can be important as we gain life experience and ring longer and longer to not overwork this area, because that can cause injury. Not so quickly on bells F5 and above. But if you're ringing the bottom of the 3rd octave, C and D4, that's starting, not only is that putting stress on my wrist, I can feel my shoulder engaged to try to stop things. If I ring correctly, I've kept the weight more over the center of my body. I'm using my stronger muscles, my larger muscles, and I'm not prone to injury by overstretching. Really important with bass bells. That's a lot of stress being put on your wrist. But if I can keep it more upright, yes, my wrist will still flex and extend, but it's doing so because the bell is taking it there. I'm not pushing the bell. So passive wrist is the term we like to use. Not active wrist, passive. If the bell makes it move, that's okay. But don't make the bell move with the wrist. Don't want to see that stretching happen. That's not good. That's starting the sound. Starting the sound is great. However, we need to stop the sound as well. How do we stop the sound of the bell? Damp it on your shoulder. With these smaller bells, you can just touch the rim of the bell to the shoulder, and that should be enough. Once it's damped, I want to return it to the ready to ring position, so I'm ready to go for its next time. A great exercise is just alternating left hand, right hand. You can start with quarter note, quarter rest, quarter note, quarter rest, to make sure that people are together. Great exercise. Take the rest out. Ringing and dampening. There are at least 3 ways that your ringers should be able to damp. Number 1 is on their shoulders. Shoulders, chest, you get the idea. I'm going to call this the shoulder even though I know it's not my shoulder. It's easier for me. That's shoulder dampening. You will see people sometimes belly dampening, especially in the bass bells. Understand, we'll talk about bass bells in a moment. This generally looks better to the congregation, to the audience, rather than... So try to go with shoulder dampening. When there's a bell change, and we'll talk about bell changes later, you may need to table damp. So all you do after the bell is rung, and you've kept it upright as long as possible, you then just gently push it to the table. You can use the same exercise. great way to prepare people to get ready for bell changes. And you don't even have to talk about bell changes. You can do dampening on the shoulder and then dampening on the table. Dampening, damping, both words are interchangeable in the bell world. So with bells like this, the small bells, you can just put your thumb up there to dampen it. Finger dampening. That's to silence the bell. This is different from thumb dampening, but finger dampening. If you are doing something that has some active notes, especially in the upper bells, and it's a flowing musical piece, and it would just look very choppy. I haven't done this in a while. Your treble ringers can learn by using their fingers, they can keep that visual motion, and it can look very beautiful. The last, I'll talk about bass bell dampening. Now with bass bells, hopefully you have two hands available. If you have two hands available, that's helpful with bass bells. All of this casting is vibrating when you ring. If you only dampen the rim, the rest of this casting may be vibrating, so you get an overtone, and the bell will still be sounding even though this is damped. Woo! If you can hear that pitch. I damped it on my shoulder, but the rest of the bell is going. So, bass bell ringers will need to either pull their arm back a little further and dampen more with their side, or use their other hand to dampen near the shoulder of the bell. You can dampen these on the table, but you get that whomp. Re-whomp. Well, to avoid that, I just brush it with this other hand on the way down. That takes a lot of the whomp out. If you need it even shorter, you can kind of grab it with the other hand and make it a very dry cutoff. But I think it's very important, you need to be able to dampen well on the shoulder and dampen confidently on the table. If you can do that, your choirs will go a long way, being comfortable dampening both ways, nice and clean. Let's talk articulations, what some people will call handbell techniques. Let's maybe move toward articulations, like with a wind instrument. You have marcato and staccato, longer and short ways of playing. Let's look at it this way. The first articulation I'd like to talk about is ring touch. It's marked with an RT at the note, either above it or below it. RT, ring touch. It is merely the shortest duration note that you can ring. In order to do ring touch correctly, it needs to stay close to you, because as soon as you ring it, you need to dampen the bell. So don't ring it out here, because that hurts, and you get that extra clapper hit. So keep it close to you, and think of pulling your elbows back to dampen. No matter whether it's ring touch on an eighth note, ring touch on a quarter note, ring touch on a half note, if for some reason they have it written that way, it doesn't matter. Your ring touches should be the same length no matter what value the note is. It's the shortest note you can ring. The challenge of the ring touch is to not play it louder. So if I play 4 quarter notes with this bell and the fourth one is a ring touch, that's very common, where ring touch. So make sure that ring touch is close to you. It's just supposed to be a short note. That elbow back, ring and bring those elbows back, will really help that. That's the ring touch. the martellado. This is your junior high and high school ringers' favorite technique. This is where they want to just beat the stuffing out of the pads. Properly done, martellado, you should think of punching the foam with your knuckles. So I'm not even going to put a bell in the equation. I'm just going to make a fist and punch the foam. That's all there is to the martellado. Just put the bell in your hand when you do it. There are people that say that the bell should be no further than 2 tacos high off of the table. Another measurement is the height of the bell. So about that same distance. So the smaller bells will start closer to the table. The larger bells can be further from the table. Another great measurement is just open these 3 fingers. And there's your distance. Don't forget to curl them up so you don't hurt your knuckle. But I'm now just going to punch the pad. I'm going to bring this shoulder over the table, so I'm going straight down. That's all there is. You want to avoid this idea. I know people have shown me in the past, start with the handle on the table and then just do that forward. That's not very controllable, and it's not really good for your handle to put that stress on the handle. But if you go straight down, it's really, really fine. Plus, with that shoulder over the table, you've limited how far above the table people will bring the bell. Because you get that, your arm is in the way. You can't bring it up super high. If I don't, I can bring it down from here, which is going to be dangerous for the bell and dangerous for the sound of the music. If I lean over, I'm really restricted to how far that bell will be off the table. So it's just, don't think about the casting, just punch the foam with your knuckles. Other hand as well. The bell manufacturers will say not to mark below G3, which is the bottom of the 4th octave. It's a bell between these sizes. They will tell you that. Part of their reasoning, yes, they do know what they're talking about. But your castings are warranted for life. If your casting fails, they will replace it if you're the original owner, unless there are signs of abuse. So they set their limit at G3. Well, if I follow the rule, I feel, if I follow the rules and don't have this bell too high off the table, I'm not going to damage it with a mart. I feel comfortable with that. However, feel free to use a different stopped technique if a mart is called for and you're not confident with your ringers or you don't want to chance it. The mart lift, most of the short sounds that are into the table also have a lift version of it. So a mart lift, I'm still going to put my knuckles into the table, but instead of putting it into the foam, I'm going to bounce it off the foam and get this. I wish it had a different name because a lot of times when people mart lift, they'll mart and then they'll pull the bell out and they get this sound. So you get the big accent sound, but then not much after. I like more sound afterwards, so I like to bounce off of the table. And I think that gives a better sound. The pluck. The pluck is a one-handed technique. One hand. It should not include your body, or your arm, or your elbow, or your other hand. Done correctly, there's no need for that. All of these things require practice. So if someone doesn't get it on the first try, understand. Just more repetition. Now, in order to do a pluck, well, I'm just going to choose a larger bell that I know I can reach into easily. I'm going to take my thumb and my first 2 fingers, like this, and for me, like I'm reaching into one of those holiday chocolate assortments where I want that caramel in the middle and I don't want to touch all the other ones. I'm going to, with my thumb now on top of the clapper, I'm going to reach all the way in front of the bell, and I'm going to pick that clapper up. When it's time to pluck, I'm going to just flick my hand forward, and that throws the clapper down. If you come straight over the bells and go straight forward, notice my bells are not rolling. Okay? I may be a handbell wizard, but I'm not a wizard. As long as I'm going straight and not causing a sideways motion, the bells will stay put. Don't let your people come around the side, because that's going to move them and make them want to roll. So you reach over the top of the bell with those thumb and first two fingers, with your thumb on top, lift it up, and don't think of throwing it down. Throw your hand, flick your hand forward. For larger bells, if your ringer can't comfortably reach over the top, that's understandable. If they have the time, what they can do is turn the bell toward them. And I'm going to come over to you. You're going to do basically the same thing, but you're going to throw it down, throw the clapper down from in front of the bell. So I'm just going to reach inside. Now my thumb's, it doesn't matter if my thumb's on the top or the bottom, but I'll throw the clapper down. That's for really large bells and small people that can't reach all the way across. Or if that's really awkward, just mallet the bell on the table, which we'll cover later. The sound is essentially the same, and it works fine. For plucking the smaller bells, this is G5. I can still fit my thumb and two fingers in there. Even smaller, this is B6. Well, now that's getting to the point, that's a little ridiculous because my fingers are big. So what you can do is, again, use a different articulation, or you just use your thumb and use your thumb, and that needs just a little pressure toward the bell. Plucking is something that I would not have my smaller bell ringers have to do, but that's how it would be done. Sometimes, if you don't have mallets, or if someone wants a plucked sound repeatedly, you can do what's called a tap pluck. If you just take your thumb and think of doing this on the clapper, all you wannabe slap bassists, that's all it is. That's how you can do that. Or again, I would probably go to mallets for my people because they're so much more fun and reliable to me than the pluck. That's the pluck. There also exists a pluck lift that requires coordination for as soon as that pluck goes, you pick it up. Now the pluck lift has to be a two-handed technique because I can't pluck and then lift very well when you want that sound. Something to think about. If you have pluck lifts, you are not going to pluck the bell with its hand. So this is F and G5, if that's my position. If I'm plucking, I'm going to pluck the F with the F hand and pluck the G with the G hand. If I'm doing a pluck lift, I'm holding the F with the F hand and plucking with the G hand. So that bell is in the quote-unquote correct hand. That's plucking and pluck lift. Thumb dampening. Thumb dampening is a really nice sound, but it's going to be different for different people and for different bells. This one, I'll start with G5. The only difference between a ring and a thumb damp is that with the thumb damp, there is some finger on the casting. So I would refresh people with, let's just ring this G5. See that nice circle motion, that nice D motion? Okay. When you ask people to thumb damp, stroke the same. It's going to look and sound a little better. Now, depending on the size of your hand and the size of your bell, in order to do a thumb damp, you just place your thumb along that casting towards you. Now that's ringing a little much for me, so now I'm going to bring my index finger up a little bit and put it on the casting as well, which puts my thumb a little higher. I like that sound. It has a little bit of a ring after the strike, but it's not too dead. And it's also not ringing on, as it did with just my thumb. That's ringing a little too much. If I add more than my index finger, that's a specific effect that I want something really, really dry. That's too much dampening for thumb damp. So for this size bell in my hand, I'm using index finger and thumb. For C7, if I put my thumb on there, too dry. So I'm going to use the tip of my thumb. And I'm going to adjust where on the curve it is. Too low. Pretty good. Kind of dry, but it depends on the piece. So I'm going to fine tune it with where my thumb is. As we've experimented with G5, I needed thumb and finger. If I'm thumb dampening a C4 and I have my thumb and first finger on, it's not going to do any good. It chokes it a little bit, but it doesn't sound good. So this I'm definitely going to think of using my two fingers and thumb. And notice how far up the handle my hand has to come. I would just play around with that to find where the right sound is. Or I'm going to do a regular ring and bring this hand over and put some fingers on the casting. And experiment that way and find out if I get the sound I want. If I need to do both bells, I can't do that. So again, I would use a different articulation to get the idea of that sound. Your bass bells, why in the world would I want to thumb damp a bass bell? Need a lot of my hand to do that. I would just use mallets. That's thumb dampening, depending on the size of your hand and the size of the casting. The smaller bells will use less of your thumb tip. The medium bells, you'll use your thumb or if your hands are small, you're going to bring up another finger. And as you get down C5 and below, ringer will probably need to bring up two fingers into the casting. That's your thumb damp. Second only to marting, your junior high and high school youth will love to use mallets on the bells. Mallets come in an assortment of shapes, sizes, and coverings. And they all should come with bell ranges printed on the handle. You should pay fairly strict attention to these bell ranges. This one, the handle says this is good for from G2 all the way up through B3. And they are really cushy yarn wrapped. We have here, this one says G4 to G5. It's a lot smaller, but also yarn wrapped. So any bell between G4 and G5 should sound good and be safe with this mallet. These harder mallets are not yarn wrapped, and they are, say, C6 all the way up to G7. And finally, the screamers, G6 to C8, very hard plastic. Now, you may use larger, cushier mallets on smaller bells safely. So these are rated to go up to B3. Used above B3, they won't have much percussive sound. Not even making a sound there. C and D4, a very, very subtle sound. You may not, under any circumstance, take these mallets, which are designed for bells up to C8, and use them on low bells. It's going to be a bad sound, but also breakage. If you take one of these hard mallets and give a bass bell a whack with it, you can shatter the casting, or at least crack it all the way around. Can you go a bell higher or lower? Sure, but just use caution when you're using harder mallets on larger bells. Holding the mallets. First and foremost, you want to kind of pinch it between your thumb and your index finger. So I like this middle knuckle or first knuckle in that first finger. And then, just like ringing the bell, I'm going to use these bottom three fingers for that motion, okay? Do not put your index finger on top. And you want to rebound off the bell and draw the sound out of the bell. You can't do that with your finger on top very well. These are for F to G5. So, look inside your bell and see about where the clapper would strike the casting. It's about here. That is the optimal place for me to mallet. I'm just going to very gently, I like starting with the mallets on the bells, because that's where I'm going to aim for. Just have a gentle motion. You're going to lift with your wrist. This is the one time that your wrists will be activated. You don't want to come from your elbows. You just want to lift gently from your wrist. And using these bottom fingers, just give it a little bit of encouragement to go forward. You can use two mallets on the same bell. Just have to create space for them to be. It's about a 45-degree angle is a nice angle for the mallets to be on if you're using two bells or if you're using one bell. Either way is fine. If you are doing repeated mallet strikes on one bell, it is better to alternate hands. So if I'm playing F and G5, this is not my F mallet and this my G mallet. This makes no sense. This is just hanging out for the ride. Use them both. It'll be much more even. Mallet rolls on a bell have been very difficult for people. Mallet rolls don't have to be super fast. They have to be even. That tempo and speed is just fine for a mallet roll, and when everyone else who has the mallet roll does it together, it all blends. As long as it's even, the ear will hear it as a roll. You don't want some being louder than others. You just want a nice, even alternation. If you have just that plus sign, just that sign to mallet, that's with the bell off of the table. What I like is for my ringers to hold the bells up so they can see where they're going to strike the bell. And they are looking at me so they can see when. They should be able to look down here at the music and see what bell and know what beat it's on, but they're going to be looking at me. Take your mallet, turn it so your palm is in, And then you're going to treat it like this is an ice cream cone, and the ice cream is starting to drip down the edge. You just want to catch it like that. It's nice if you can keep the circle once you've done the mallet strike, but if it's repeated, you can wait until you have a longer duration note to do the movement and keep it there. But if they keep it up, they can see, if they keep that bell up, they can see you, the director, and they can also see where it is. This doesn't work because they're going to go, they're going to hit the casting with this part of the mallet. Or if they're doing this, they're not going to know when. They're going to be on their own tempo instead of this. So if you can get them to raise it up, plus this keeps the bell with the sound going right. This, again, the congregation, the audience won't hear it nearly as well as this. Palm in. What if you have to do both bells? One choice is to put the lower, I like the lower bell because that makes more sense to me. And then I'm going to put the handles together like this. And I'm going to reach through the bottom bell's handle and pick it up. And that feels really, really secure. So I have the upper note and the lower note. With the bell down, you reverse your circle. The circle is nice, it's less important. That's one way to do it. Upper bell, lower bell. On the smaller bells, if it's a position where the ringers are more comfortable doing four in hand, as long as they remember which bell is close to them, I would put in a four in hand setup. We'll cover this later. This also allows for a third bell to be held in the pinky. And you can do that as needed. Now, the last thing about that, when you have suspended bells being used with a mallet, it's automatically an LV. Don't dampen. It automatically should ring. And LV is coming up, but it's an automatic LV. You don't say, oh, this is a quarter note. No, if it's suspended bell with mallet, until you're told to dampen it. As with the other stopped sounds, you can have a mallet lift. We don't see these that often, but I'm going to use the hand for the G on the handle, like we do with the pluck lift. I'm trying to coordinate lifting the sound of the bell and lifting the bell at almost the same time. Not seen very often, kind of tricky to get the coordination, but that's mallet lift to go along with pluck lift and mart lift. As I mentioned with the suspended bells with mallets, the LV, let vibrate, laissez vibrer is where it comes from, French term, but let it vibrate. It means don't dampen the bell. The notes in an LV section will show you when to strike them. And when there's an LV, you don't dampen them until there's another LV, which is like for you piano players, you've put the damper pedal down, you've played, and then you have that caret to lift and put back down. That's the same idea. So I have an LV for my F and my G, and then the next LV starts with a G. So it would be something. You dampen everything that was previously undamped and start by ringing the next bell. If I don't have a G on the next LV, it's and then I ring the G when it's supposed to be rung. LVs are not canceled by rests. LVs are not canceled by measure lines. They are canceled by another LV, where it cancels and restarts. It's canceled by the marking of an R, meaning to ring and damp normally. It's canceled by the little bullseye looking symbol, almost like a coda symbol. That's a symbol to stop LVing. Or it's canceled by another technique. So if I go from LV into Mart, the new technique stops or cancels the LV. The echo, or what I identify as the fishhook symbol. The echo is more effective on larger bells because you are going to ring the bell and then touch and lift it off of the foam. Each of those markings tells you when to do that wah-wah lift. And it should be printed on a beat so you see when. You can have a half note, and then that fish hook, that would be on the second beat. So I'm going to ring the bell, and then this is very important. After I ring the bell, I'm going to turn the bell in a quarter turn. I'm going to feel like a bulldog. I'm going to lean over the table, and then sort of like a mart, where I'm thinking of the back of my hand is going toward the table. It's not going to reach the table. The lip of the bell will reach first, and then I'm going to pull it out of the foam, each for those number of fish hooks. So I'm going to ring the bell, turn it in, and then barely touch the table. It's more effective on the lower bells. Here is the C3. You do want that whoomp with the echo. It's less effective on the smaller bells because it seems that almost as soon as you touch the bell, it's out of energy. You don't get the wah-wah. You can get the visual, you don't get the wah. And if you try to get the wah, you end up dampening the bell. That quarter turn does a number of things. It puts your strongest muscles in charge, and it also eliminates marting that you don't want. You don't want this on an echo. Even if I do it more correctly, there's a good chance that the bell is going to restrike when I do that. If I give it that quarter turn, I can do it harder than I should, and it won't have a clap or restrike. So that quarter turn in, very important for the echo. Again, a really effective technique, probably C5 or G4 and down. The swing, what used to be called the tower swing. You'll have the SW and you have the arrows down and up. The straight arrow down, as opposed to the fish hook, tells you when the bell should go down. The arrow up tells you when the bell should come back up. Don't think swing back. Because if you swing back, and there is a table, or as we found, a marble baptismal font behind a ringer, that's not a pleasant sound. Okay? You don't want to hit anything behind you. If you go down with your bell rather than back, you will be more successful. I like thinking that just like with the echo, we did that quarter turn. I like the quarter turn with these bells as well, but I like going out with it. So I'm going to ring, turn it out, and then I do my motion. And again, with a clapper turn that way, it shouldn't restrike. I think that I have my snow cone here, and a bug has landed on it. And I want to get it off of that, get off of my ice cream. So I'm going to ring, turn it out, and take the bell down. Besides not swinging back, you want to step back from the table with that leg. the C4 is in my left hand, I'm going to ring, step back so I don't hit the table. I'm going to ring, step back, turn the bell out, get rid of that bug, bring the bell back up, stepping back forward, and continue on. So, if you have to do both bells, you still need to do the step back. You don't necessarily step back with both feet, but step back. As long as you are going down, notice the casting is not going behind me. People in the past have done motion like that or have done that motion. Really, really dangerous unless you know for a fact there is nothing anywhere behind you and there's no one walking through. So think of the swing as being down, not back. You can adjust the speed of it to get more wah or less wah. Okay. Singing bell, marked SB. This is a lot of fun. This one comes from the Tibetan monks and their singing bowls. We've just found out we can do it with handbells as well. You need a wooden dowel. This is either 1 1/4 inch or 1 1/2 inch wooden dowel that I cut about a 6-inch length, sanded the rough edges off. Just got wooden dowel at the lumber yard at the home improvement store. Take your bell. You can hold it upright. You can hold it this way. Doesn't matter. What's important is that your thumb with the dowel points up. So if you do this or that, as long as your thumb is up, you don't want this. You don't want thumbs down. Puts undue stress on your arm. Thumb up. This is just a bare wooden dowel. I contact the rim of the bell, and you go around the outside of the bell, trying to keep the same contact and pressure all the way around the bell. The sound will not start right away. It needs to develop. So the faster you move the dowel and the more pressure you use, the louder the singing will be. To get it started, I usually start with a gentle pressure and fairly fast, and as I feel the bell starting to sound, I slow down the speed and give it a little more pressure. Know that as you're on the far side of the bell, you're now not pushing, but you're pressuring in the bell, and that can be, it's easy for that dowel to slip off the bell. It's okay, but try to keep it in contact. That's just a plain wooden dowel. I have them in different sizes, in different diameters. The larger the bell, seemingly the thicker dowel works better. These have been made by a friend of mine. Her dad made them. Did a nice job. They're beautiful pieces of wood, and then he dipped them in something called Plastidip. People can get it at again, the home improvement store, the hardware store. It's for electrical tools. It's liquid insulation that then hardens to this plasticness. Sometimes people don't like the sound of the wood on the metal, and sometimes this Plastidip helps it start singing sooner. Almost right away. I like these because I can use the plastic side, or I don't have to use the plastic side. It really doesn't matter. Whatever works best for you. There gets to be a certain range of bells, somewhere around E or F6. When you start getting higher than that, it's really hard to get them to sing. but the lower bells are glorious sounds. This is C3. It can just be a really spooky, ethereal sound. Some people find that a gentle tap to get the bell vibrating, to get the bell starting, allows them to be more successful in getting the bell to sing. You just don't want to noticeably hit it. You want it to sneak in. But that's the singing bell. Bell upright or turned, but thumb up with the stick. That's singing bell. They're still working, the handbell world is still working on unifying how to write it. Usually it's SB. Sometimes they'll have a note, a chord, whole notes with a tie to nothing for a number of measures. And then later on there'll be a measure with ties from nothing. That's showing you the duration. They won't, if it's an 8-measure singing bell, they won't have 8 measures of tied whole notes. It's just too much to see. But that has not been standardized quite yet. A lot of times with singing bell, there will be a footnote telling you when to start and when to stop. So, I hope I've answered a lot of questions, or most of the questions you may have. If you have others, or if you want clarification or anything like that, please don't hesitate to contact me. My email address appears here, director@vhcbells.org. I'm happy to answer all your questions, especially if you're local. My group does do workshops. We'll be happy to send people out. We can work something out, time and place and the like, and we can help you that way. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks. Hope you had a good time. I know I did. I always have fun talking about bells. Have a great rest of the conference, and hope to see you soon. Take care.